Welcome to the Heart of Dad podcast. Heart of Dad is a podcast for entrepreneurs who are passionate about their families and business and looking to find more clarity, more balance and more alignment in all areas of their life. Come and join the community at heartofdad.com or on Facebook at groups/Heart of Dad. This week on Heart of Dad, I'm interviewing Billy Mann. Billy is a father, husband, entrepreneur, business owner, coach, blogger, soon-to-be author, and all-round lover of life. He has spent all of his life in business in one form or another. He literally grew up in his family business. They lived over it and has worked serving people in one form or another as far back as he can remember. People have always been his passion. As life has it, it took a life-changing event to see something new, and he spent the last 10 years dedicated to understanding what it really means to enjoy our lives, creating what it is that reflects our joy. Now, along with running a very successful salon with very happy staff, it's a very joyful place for them all to work in, he says, to helping others to find that sweet spot inside, he's busily creating a coaching business to help business owners discover what it means to really live and love their business and their staff. Having spent 27 years employing people, both as a freaked out, stressed out boss, to having a more productive and profitable business, taught him that people always come first, and a great relationship with staff builds a great business. That comes from being a great boss, and that's not as tough as it may seem. So this week on Heart of Dad, I'm delighted to welcome Billy Mann to the conversation. Hi, Billy.
Hi, Matt.
Great to have you
How
here.
are you doing? I'm delighted to be here.
I'm really well, thank you. So, Billy, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
Well, I'm Billy Mann. Like I put up in the bio, I'm a father, businessman, entrepreneur, writer, blogger. I'm many things, but I'm all one thing. I'm all just me. To give you a history in the business aspect of it, I've grown up in business all over my life. Like I said, in my family, we had a family business. Grew up in that. I've grown up in business and service of people all my life. And I stumbled across hairdressing 35 odd years ago. And 30 years ago, I opened my own business, and I've been trading since as an employer. Steep learning curve along the way, and in various times up and various times down, and managed to make my way through 2 serious recessions and stay in business. And I have 3 wonderful teenage kids most of the time. I have my daughter currently studying for her finals. Would be the A-levels in the UK. It's the leaving cert here in Ireland. And I have 2 boys who are in their gap year. What you refer to as the gap year, it would be our transition year here. And the boys are 16 and she's 18. And it's an interesting time. They're big into sport. I don't know, is that enough, or is there more? Do you want to know more? Or?
That's a great starting point. And I love already what you've shared. So you've been in business for a long time, and I guess your kids will have been born through that time and grown up with you in business. And that's an interesting starting point for me, because I think one of the conversations I'm having with dads, particularly dads who have businesses, is like, how do you manage that, the kind of the arrival of children into your life and still managing to bring home the bacon, so to speak, with your business?
Truthfully, initially, badly. That's how I handled it. I don't think anybody can prepare you for the arrival of a child in your life. They just can't. You can read all the books, you can be told by everybody, but there's something extraordinary about being handed your own child. It's quite a thing. And then 18 months later to be handed 2 more, it turns into busy time. So it took a while to find equilibrium, because one of the boys wasn't physically strong and had a lot of residual problems after birth, with dietary issues and asthma, and he's, as they would say, a sickly child when he was born. He's a fine strapping boy now, but young man, but at that stage. So, and I really was head, neck and heels in my own stuff at that time as well, Matthew. You know, things were not psychologically great. And so it took time. It took time. It took time to find equilibrium. It took time to find that balance again. And I suppose having grown up in business with the kind of parents that I had, particularly my mother, there was a real strong business first ethic in the family. Whereas I'm married to a woman who has no commercial background whatsoever. She's a nurse, and her parents both worked in their lives, different jobs. So for them, it was the other way. It was the balance. It was family first. So it was a clash of cultures for a while. You know, when we arrived in, I have to work and you have to do this, and you know, and this stuff went on. But in fairness to my wife, you know, she held the line. She was right to hold the line, you know, because there were times I could work, you know, 7 days a week, work long hours. I'd be late coming home. And I imagine then as time went by, Matthew, I started to get involved in the coaching and stuff like that, you know, just to start finding my own way back. I had therapy and I tried all different types of things. But truth be known, Matthew, I was disconnected from my life around me because I was so busy looking for something to ease my own stuff. But in fairness to my wife, she kept reminding me, you know, she'd tell me there's matches tonight, make sure you're there, or the concerts, or what do you think of this? And she kept me in the conversation when I wasn't in the conversation. And I began to realize that this was unhealthy. I was missing my kids as they were growing up. You know, and a woman many years ago told me something that really, it's always stayed with me, and it's that the fact we only borrow our kids from their life. We only borrowed our kids from their life. They're with us for a short space of time in their life, and if we raise them right, we raise them independent, we raise them strong, and we raise them to live their own life. So that part of their life is that we have together is quite short in the grand span of things for both sets of lives. So I began to realize that so much stuff was happening that I wasn't involved in, and if I was there, I wasn't there. My head was somewhere else, and I'm not quite sure what the moment was. To be truthfully honest, I suppose it's more organic than that. But I began to just to shift my priorities a little bit, and I suppose I started to leave work at work. When I was pulling out the door of the business at 6 o'clock in the evening, unless I had to in the evening, I was leaving it behind me. And then I was coming home, and that period of time didn't spend with the kids, whatever it was. And if I had something to do then 9 or 9:30, at that stage they were younger, 8:30 when they were gone to bed, then I'd pick back up and I'd finish what I had to do. But given that time in between was given to the kids. So I was making an effort to come home, and I realized that when my kids are going to bed early, and a half an hour in the evening is really nothing. You know, I'm like, am I a bedtime dad? You know what I mean? I'm just there to put them to bed. No, it's important, don't get me wrong. But I felt that I wasn't getting the quality, just entirely for myself, not just for my kids, but just for myself. I felt I wasn't getting the quality. And did my business fail? No. You know, am I much happier? Yes. And then the coaching kind of started as well. And then that became another hard jog. I started at that. So now I was running 2 businesses. So back to stuff again. And how quickly it creeps back in, you know, the old habit creeps back in. And so I worked and worked and worked and worked. So when I wasn't hairdressing, I was taking calls in the evening again. I was trying to balance everything. And then at the weekends and at Sundays and Mondays, and I would drop the kids off to school, I'd come home and I'd be working. And so I was giving myself no time to decompress even for myself. And then, lo and behold, the body failed January 12 months ago, Christmas 12 months ago, actually. And I spent the first week of December in the 18 inside in hospital. And as I came out, it took me a number of months last year to convalesce. And again, back to the reminder of it, you know, that it's so easy to fall back into the trap. And quite quickly I realized, well, this is it now. I prioritize this part of my life for this. And I prioritize this part of my life for my kids. And there are times logically we can't make everything, you know, for whatever reason. You know, that will happen. It's just, there are times you can't do everything. But as much as I possibly can, that's at the top of my list. Kids come first. That's it.
That's a beautiful story, Billy. Thank you for sharing it. And what I really heard in that is that pretty much organically you came to realize, with some inputs from your wife and this person who made this very profound statement about borrowing our kids for a part of their lives. That sort of brought you back to your senses in a way of who you were, not just as a business owner, but also as a dad. And then later, as you started dabbling in coaching, maybe the shadow of working hard on that business started taking over a bit and led you to this health scare that you had, and health issue.
Well, what it led to me was parking everything last year. I parked it all. I stopped coaching and everything. Just went to work. That was it. I mean, could I do it the extra many times? Of course I could. I got teenage kids, the drain is on, all the time. But, you got to, like I say, is it about the money or is it about being with your kids? You can have both. There is no question about that. But one shouldn't be at the expense of the other.
Right. Beautifully put. So how have you seen your relationship with your children evolve over the years then, with this kind of opening up of your own consciousness of how you want to parent and show up as a dad?
Okay, let me begin by saying this, Matthew. There are times I screw up. Okay. And we need to be real around this. There are times we get this wrong.
Of course.
And there are times, that we get sucked into our own stuff and, we're up in our heads. And like usually when I'm working with clients, or advising them or other coaches or maybe mentoring or whatever, I would always say to them, if you're working with somebody who tells you they've got all the answers, it's then or ever you need to move away. Because in my experience, I have met nobody with all the answers.
So true.
And so allowing for that is allowing myself to see that I don't have all the answers. And there are times I fuck it up. I just do, And there are times that I get annoyed or I get upset myself, But in general, the quality of my relationship with my teenagers is incomparable to the way it used to be, in the sense that I really enjoyed them growing up, really enjoyed the humor of them and all that. And then I kind of missed a period up along, and then I kind of had to find my way back. And I tend to have a very open relationship with my kids now, a very honest relationship with my kids. And do they like to call me out stuff every now and then? They certainly do. And sometimes they are right. Like, fuck, God, you know what I mean? When I unleash the double standard of parenting, do as I say, not as I do,
Oh yeah, I know that one well.
Yeah, we're all masters of that one every now and then. But I found that they need to figure shit out for themselves, as much as we all do. But it's my job to create the safety net around that, as a parent, especially when they reach this age, where we can have those conversations. And myself and my wife, sometimes I'm hit up about something and, my wife says, take the foot off the gas, and vice versa. She gets wound up or stressed out about something. And she'll say to me, but you're not supporting it. But I would say, but I am. I'm just not supporting it the way you want me to. Because sometimes she has got one thing in her head, or I have one thing in my head, and we want to see it that way. And then we forget that, but that's just how we see it. And one of those valuable lessons I suppose I got myself as I started to fall into the principles and work through that particular, loath to use the word modality around this particular subject, but if I am trying to figure myself out, and if I am doing the best I can with what I have, with the understanding I have in my life, so is everybody else, including my kids. Including my kids. And they have their own thoughts, and they have their own feelings, and they have their own wants, and they have their own needs, and their own desires, and all of that stuff. And I see times, I see them flourish. I see, I get glimpses of this extraordinary maturity in them, when you think they're not listening, I can assure you they're listening, and sometimes you kind of get, oh, wow, I didn't think they heard that one before, and they come back to you with it in the context of where they are themselves, and you kind of go, whoa, little mental celebration there, they've heard that. I mean, recently we had my son Cormac, he's 16, and he started going out with this girl. And it was a brief thing, but I suspect quite intense. He was mad about her. And we went to holidays the 2nd of January, and the 4th of January, and on the 3rd of January she finished it before we went on holidays. So your man was, when I came in anyway, my man was heartbroken, and that's fair enough. So he waited for me to come in, and we had a chat and a bit of a cry, and we hugged it out. And because I'm very much a believer in openly affectionate to my children, and there is a reason for that, and I can explain that to you in a minute. But we started to have a conversation just around how he was heartbroken and the pain of it, and I didn't get all psychological on him or anything like that, and we spoke about it. And then I asked him why she broke up with him, and he said to me that she didn't feel the same as he did about her. She didn't just feel the same about him. And I said, then I kind of went, well, I have to admire that in her. And he says, what do you mean by that? And I said that it takes a lot to be honest with yourself. And it takes a lot to be honest with yourself enough that you know that even if that other person is hurt in the long run, it's the right thing to do. And I said, no, I understand why you liked her so much, because clearly this girl has got some integrity here. And she was willing, to say, look, Cormac, this isn't working. In the sense that I don't, she really liked him, but she said, but I just don't like you the way you, as much as you like me. And I feel that it wouldn't be fair of us going on, because I feel I'd be leading you on, which wouldn't be fair to you. And I was really impressed with that, And so that's how we formed up the conversation. So I spoke about him, and I told him to be okay with being heartbroken. And I also said to him that, as a matter of fact, it's a really healthy sign to be able to know both love and heartache, and be able to express both love and heartache, which I said is a very healthy sign of maturity, I said. So I may not feel like it right now, I said, but getting your ass kicked, is part of life. And be willing to get your ass kicked again and again and again, because being open to love is very important. And each time that this happens, you'll recognize that you will really get through the heartache. It may hurt for a while. And then as it went on and went back and forth, I was just checking in and out with him. And then we spoke about how thoughts and feelings, and we got into that conversation about how they pass. And a number of conversations rolled on through the holidays and stuff. And then about 2 days before we were coming home, he said to me, Dad, he says, the way you said, if I leave it alone, it goes away, and just let it be what it is. And I said, yeah. And he said how thoughts and feelings will pass, and if the thoughts pass, the feelings go with them, and just allow them to settle. And I said, yeah. He says, gotcha. Was it? Was it? And he mulled his way. He part because he come to me and I'd say to him, "How are you feeling?" He said, "I'm feeling blue right now." And I'd say, "Oh, where are you at?" He said, "Look, I know." And look, he says, "It's part of being this steady." He says, "I know there are times I'm going to miss her." And this was the next part of it. He said to me, he said, "But why do I feel blue about this?" And I said, "Well, I said, when your mind wanders into who you're missing and what you're missing, the feelings of loss come with it. So what you're feeling is that sense of loss around that you miss the Lucy, you miss the friends and the crack that you were having for a while. So that sense of loss is coming with it, that feeling of loss, and that's perfectly normal. That's perfectly normal to feel that loss. Be okay with it, and off you go. You know, and we had these lovely conversations with it,
Beautiful.
and it was really beautiful.
Mm.
And in his own way, he'll internalize it and he'll figure it out and he'll come back. And I've had different events with my daughter like that. Tomas, I'm kind of like the annoying dad to him at the moment. We're in that phase at the moment, so I just keep my hands off it and let him alone.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
letting him be. He knows where we are. I steal a moment with him every now and then when his guard is down. I tell him every day that I love him, though. He doesn't get that excuse, you know.
Such a great story, Billy. I love it. I think you touched on something very briefly before, and we didn't go into it. But I wondered if it was related to what I wanted to ask you about, which is, you know, your relationship with guilt as a dad, because it's something for me that's been quite a tough one in different domains, partly in as a business owner, but also just in how I parent. And I think, you know, you were saying we all screw up from time to time. But I just wondered how that's evolved for you over time. You talked about the hard early days and then how things have evolved. Where are you with guilt?
I'm actually nowhere with it no Mitchell, truthfully.
Mm.
It doesn't feature anymore. It doesn't feature anymore, you know. Because it just isn't part of it, you know, for me anymore. My kids are going to find things about me they just don't like, you know. Am I going to make mistakes that there are times I should have bit my tongue? Yeah, maybe I should have, you know. But in relation to guilt, you know, guilt comes when you do nothing about it. Guilt comes when you do nothing about it. And if I fuck it up, I do apologize to my kids. If I get it wrong, or and there are times that I would have got it really wrong, or we've had a short match over something or whatever, and I didn't kind of go, whoa, wait a second now, in my own mind. What's all the panic over? You know, you get in a sweat over something, and suddenly it has to be this way, and you know, and the thought becomes rigid and factual, and then the rest of the world must bend into that rigid, factual nature of your thought, but it's not, you know. And then he finds himself in a situation going, God, jeez, I can't believe I got stuck in that. You know what I mean? And then just kind of going, do you know what, guys? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not saying I'm sorry. Got that one wrong. And that's all I can do. That's all I can do is apologize for my own humanness.
I love that wisdom. That will resonate massively for many other dads listening, and feel quite liberating as well. I think it's just kind of owning who you are and your humanness. I love that.
We all screwed up. It's just the nature of how things can happen, you know. Maybe this might help particularly for guys for kids who are transitioning into that teenage period of their life. Okay, and one evening we were inside in the house one Saturday evening, my wife was on nights, and we kind of had arrived at a situation. The guys are 12, 13, you know, and we're in around that area. And Tomas had been for a shower upstairs in the landing, and Roisin is going to just refresh my mind in the story. And Roisin is going for the shower. No, he said he wanted to take out his towel to throw it over the landing so it would be dry. It would be airing away on the landing. And nothing would do anyway. Roisin said she'd bring it out herself when she was finished in the shower in the main bathroom. Even though she has one on her own, she preferred the big shower in the main bathroom upstairs. And she said that she'd bring out the towel, but nothing would do. Your man, he had a real bug about getting this towel out. So, the way the shower was, he couldn't see anything anyway. But he opened the door, reached in, got the towel off the floor, brought it out and closed the door. So your lady had a seizure above inside in the shower, that her brother would come into the bathroom when she was in the shower. Okay. We have no keys in the doors of our house. We don't believe in it. And so anyway, your man was standing in the landing and his sister was inside in the shower, and I, of course, I started to give out. And then I was 5 minutes of mouthing at him anyway, and I was kind of going, no, this needs to stop in my own mind. So I said, when you're finished, I want you to come downstairs. And when your sister comes out, I want you to tell her to come downstairs too. And you come into the living room and we'll sit and we'll talk. So when we came I brought the kids into the living room. The four of us sat down next to my wife was on nights. And my daughter had a little bit of a slap at him and she gave out to him and whatever. And I said, look, okay, you are correct and I need to talk about this. This is why we're in. So I said, we have an issue here in the house. And it's an issue for myself and your mum as well. I said, we have been used to walking through our house and walking in and out of every room in this house because it's our house. And what we were in this house were 2 adults and 3 children. Now we're 5 adults. And this is an entirely new world for me and your mother. And we have to go up the stairs and knock on your door before we go into your room, which is a difficult transition for people like yourself and my mother, like myself and your mother, who are used to doing this. So I said, it becomes about boundaries and it becomes about respect. And if your room isn't your safe space for you, where can you be safe in your world, regardless of who it is? So I said, for each of us, like there are 5 adults, and we must now learn to live together as adults, not just as 2 parents and 3 children. We now must learn to live together as 5 adults. That these are our rooms, these are, that we can't walk in on top of each other, and we can't go into somebody else's room and take something because it suits us. You ask for permission. It's as simple as that. And then, if you respect that, in return, you also get the same respect back. And it's the same as going for a shower. That's the reason there are no keys on the doors in this house, bar the downstairs loo for the guests. But other than that, that's it. I said, and for all of us, we must now get used to having 5 adults in the house and build a relationship based on 5 adults and respecting each other's privacy. And if we respect each other's privacy, we'll get along really, really well. And it's as much a transition for your mother and I as it is for you. We've never lived with 3 other adults in the house before. We are learning this too.
I love that story.
And it worked. No, every now and then, like one will wander in the other room because somebody's nicked the charger from downstairs or something, and on a mobile phone or whatever, and it's gone upstairs. And so you'll have somebody wandering in, but there's hell to pay when that happens, because they guard it religiously now. Their rooms are theirs, and we also don't allow technology at night up there. No technology at night.
Brilliant story.
All technology comes downstairs down to the kitchen. That's it. It's a non-runner story in our house. If it doesn't, the stuff goes into the car and it goes to Abbeyfield to work with me, and it stays there. That's it. They need to respect that. There has to be a safe space in their life.
So much.
We grew up with it, Matthew.
Yeah.
We grew up prior to the internet. We grew up prior to that deep access, and when somebody rang you to bother you, they had to ring the house phone in the hall. The phone, it was a piece of furniture that was in the house.
Right.
So when you closed your front door, you were done from the rest of the world. You were safe in your cocoon. Now the world is in your life, and it's in your house, and it's in your bed. It's everywhere. It's ubiquitous, like, and it can be really intrusive. So at night, no technology in the bedrooms, indoors.
So that's a very strong boundary you've set there.
Yeah.
But I just want to switch tacks very slightly. I mean, we're kind of touching on it now, but I was just wondering about how, I love what you were saying about guilt and how it doesn't play a role. It's a prompt, there's a prompt to make amends when things go wrong. Mm-hmm. But what about anger? Has that played a part in your life, either in your business or as a dad?
Oh yeah, I mean, that was one of the issues. Was whatever frustrated feelings that I would have about things, Matthew, or where I would be with stuff, and I found myself responding to situations, and I look back on a couple of occasions, and I remember apologizing to my daughter for doing something really stupid as a father a number of years ago when she was quite young. When I look back then, I'm kind of horrified now, but at the time it made sense because, and I was her father, and she was a small child, you know what I mean? It was a stupid fucking response. But like a couple of weeks ago, I'm out the back and in the garage cutting some timber, and we've had a sag at getting our fibre broadband in. Eventually, I had to dig the trench and do it all myself, the ducting for them to eventually come in. But as part of that, with the cuts with the top trees and stuff, and so there's a lot of timber in the garage. So it had been stacking up there, and I got up going into the garage one evening 2 weeks ago, and I said, right, I got to cut this timber, or we'll start cutting it into small logs and whatever. And so I have the chainsaw, and I have one of my guys outside, Tomas, and he's moaning and he's giving out, and he doesn't want to do it, and whatever. And then there's a rainfall, and I turn my back, and man is gone. He's gone now, and I am properly fuming at this stage, because if he'd given me a solid half an hour, 45 minutes, we would have had definitely 2/3 of it done, and the joy of, we'll say, understanding how anger and stuff and all of these things play out is the fact that if now was then, I could have nearly followed him with the chainsaw. You know what I mean? I would have been so furious with him. I mean, that's the understanding that right there is like, it's okay. It's right and proper to get angry. Mm-hmm. It's right and proper to feel it. It's what you do with it that causes the problem.
Yeah, so true.
It's what you do with it causes the problem. And it was one of those things that really resonated with me when I came across Sid Banks' work early on. It took me a while to come to it, but it always stayed me when he was being interviewed and somebody asked him, he said, what do you do? This is an enlightened man. He said, what do you do when you get angry? And he says, I get angry. I get angry, and that's the way it is. We're designed, it's part of the experience.
Yeah.
It's not just the happy stuff. We get angry, we get upset, we get guilty, but the difference is when we understand how that unfolds within us, we can see how easily we can be dictated to by it. Or we can accept it for the fact that it was, and don't get me wrong, like, when I was done outside and I came back in, I mean, I let him have a bit of it, like, that it was lousy, but he didn't, that I needed him for it. He said, but so he was into all kinds of sagas. So I left it. I knew because I was only digging the hole for myself again. So I cooked the dinner. My wife was working, so I cooked the dinner. And directly after dinner, the Cormac came out with me, and we finished up what needed to be done outside. Just the way it is. Didn't want to do it. Just had to accept it and move on.
And I bet your inner world was so much more peaceful for that, rather than ruminating or fuming or.
Oh yeah, done with that stuff.
Lesson.
Yeah, I mean, it does happen. This is the part, I think, where we go back to what I was saying a while ago about, when I'm talking to other people or clients or coaches or whatever, and I would say to them, if somebody has all the answers, they're lying to you. Because this is the moment where we don't have the answer. This is the moment where we're caught up in that. This is the moment where we're, like it's completely useless to say to somebody when they're angry, like they say it's just your thinking. Because if we knew it was our thinking, it wouldn't be an issue.
Right.
If we knew it was, we don't, because we're head, neck, and heels in the depth of the feeling and the thought and how it sweeps us up. The difference is that rather than trying to moderate it and say, I shouldn't be thinking like this, I don't know, it's perfectly normal to think like this. It's perfectly normal to feel like this. It's when you do something about it, that's when the problems really start. Because now it's starting to dictate your behavior. Now you're able to do something stupid with the chainsaw, or throw a foot out, or give him a cuff around the ear, or say something that would hurt more than even a cuff around the ear. That could leave a much deeper wound. That doesn't need to be left.
Yeah. So that's so wise. I wanted to ask you, Billy, just sort of shifting tack a little bit about your relationship with your own father and what impact that has had on you as a dad, and he was a business owner as well. How's that shaped you for good or not so good in your life?
I've often pondered this question. And I think in a lot of ways I'm very like him. As time has gone by, I've realized that I am quite like him in a lot of ways. There was something very kind about the man. He was very thoughtful about things. He was, like me, useless at being angry. He could only get angry for so long about something and then just let it go. He was useless at it, and just generally, I suppose allowing for the times that we lived in. We're looking at 50 years ago now. I'm 52, so we're looking at, say, the awareness of a parent and stuff. Our would be half a century ago now. I don't want to say it that way. But so there were different times. Okay. But in general, my father and myself were quite close. As much as at that time that would be, because men didn't speak like that or wouldn't open like that or whatever. And like I said, and I loop it back to that when I said to you a while ago that there was a story around why I tell my children I love them. And this was perhaps the greatest lesson my father inadvertently taught me. And it was the last time I saw him alive. And I was moving to the UK to work in the UK. And as with all fellas going to Ireland, from Ireland, most of us got to drive over and went on the boat and went on to London that way, because flights were very expensive at the time and whatever. And if you knew somebody that was, because people were back and forth all the time, you'd always get no spin over the boat, like you'd be red. And friends of mine were going, and they were picking me up at around 2:30, and we were making the morning sailing in Rosslare. I was going over in the back of the van with the boys. And so I sent my parents to bed. They were in their late 60s. They said, you go to bed, and when Eamon comes to pick me up, I'll go and wake you up. So my dad was a terrible snorer. Something else I would heard it from. And every now and then my mother would have to give him the red card and move him to the spare bedroom, because he would be quite epic. He'd wake the whole house. I'd say he'd wake the neighbours when he'd cut loose. So I went to my mom and I told her I loved her, and I'd ring her. And this was it, like, I'll ring you tomorrow when I get over, or tomorrow evening, or first thing when I arrive over, I'll ring you. You with me? And she said, fine, and look after yourself. I got the whole usual speech, about going, mind yourself and go to mass and do all the Irish Catholic boy stuff. And I said, fine, I will do all that. I mean, with no intentions in that whatsoever. So I went into the bedroom to my father, to the other room. So I'm inside, and he's lying in the bed, and he's looking up at me, and he said, you'll be good now, son, and be respectful, and, the usual pep talk. I even still find it quite emotional. But he was holding my hand, and as I was leaving, he was shaking my hand, like in his grip, not as a handshake, but holding my hand in his grip. And I looked at him for a second, And it just struck me. My father was telling me that he loves me. And I said to Daddy, I said, I know that. And I love you too. And he gave me two little shakes. There was, from that generation of men who didn't tell their sons that they loved them. All right. And he was telling me that he loved me. And that was the very last communication I had face to face with my father. 3 months later, he passed away suddenly. A massive heart attack, died, 68. And I learned from that whole experience was this, that if I have people in my life that mean that much to me, I'm going to let them know that I love them. And I've held that pat since I've been 23 years of age, almost 30 years now. And all my closest friends all know it. Regularly, my best friend that I meet every week, at sort of evenings, he comes back to the locality, to his house and whatever, and I meet him for coffee down his house, and we chat and catch up in weeks, ins and outs. And I've told him on numerous occasions how much he means to me. Said, if it never happens to me, you need to know just this, that I love you. You are like a brother to me, and that my life would be so empty without you in it. And I've told him this, and I would make no secret of it. And anybody that's in my life at that level will know that. I will make no secret of it, because it's really important.
It's such an amazing story. I've got
And
me
that's I know, yeah, every time I think about it, I think of just how unbelievably fucking lucky I was. Just in that moment to recognize this man is telling me that he loves me. My words were, I know, Daddy, I love you too. They were my last words to the man.
Such a beautiful moment of wisdom coming through, isn't it?
Insight, it's always working.
I mean, I'm wondering, since you're telling the story, Billy, whether you'd be willing to share the story about your mum and the letter that you've been sharing from Facebook, because it's such an amazing.
Are we okay for time in this match? Are we all right?
Yeah, we've got time.
Okay, I'm conscious of your time, but so my relationship with my mother was quite difficult. It was quite the other end of it, and in our house, my mother was the boss. Good woman, hardworking, from all of that, and they built a substantial business too. And I arrived into my mother's life and my father's life. My mother was in her mid-40s, and they were just finding stride. They were just starting to find it. When I arrived into my family, it was just one building. By the time I was in my teenage years, 10 years later, they owned the whole block, and they built into the whole block at that stage. And they were quite hard work. So I suppose as time would go by and certain things would have happened, a bit of grit got stuck in my mother's relationship with me. She did one or two things that, looking back in it, at the time it didn't seem like it. I was a child, but at the time I felt rejected. But what I didn't realize was that at the time was my mother was actually doing her best to try and keep me safe, right? And again, we're talking about like the early 70s here. So we're talking like an entirely different, it's now to 70, 50 years ago, it's an entirely different universe when we were talking about kids and rearing kids and whatever. And like, things hadn't evolved in hundreds of years. They were pretty much the same way, even at that stage, about the parent beat the top of the tree period, and children were to be seen and not heard, and all the usual stuff. And that, but in general, that wouldn't have been my parents. They were quite supportive, but it didn't matter. I had developed that particular belief as a child. Now, we forget that it's very easy now, looking back at it and the work that I have done about this matchup, about how, but we need to understand we were only 5, 6, 7, 8 years of age when we developed these things. So we have only a very rudimentary understanding of life. And without realizing it, we'll wear a belief in, the grit gets stuck in the system, and then it starts to gather as time goes on and becomes a much bigger thing. Without ever realizing that most likely the substance of that grit, what started it was just a misunderstanding through the eyes of a small child, nothing else. So by the time I had reached my teenage years and I was going to boarding school, things were okay, you know what I mean? I suppose I was a bit rebellious or whatever. But then when I went to boarding school and I had my older brother there, and he had to come home because my dad got unwell, and he never went back to finish his schooling. And literally the week that he left, a guy started bullying me, and that led to 2 years of extraordinary violence. Being meted out to me morning, noon, and night. In any shape, way, or form that he could. It was continuous, and it was a traumatic couple of years. And then I wanted to leave boarding school, and I wouldn't be left. And I suppose I got rebellious and I got angry and all that type of stuff. And it led to some bouncy times. And at 19, I had a very low period in my life, and I had one or two long dark nights of the soul in those times where I thought sincerely about taking my life because I just feel I couldn't go on. And I suppose alcohol and drugs played a part in that. Alcohol first and then drugs later on or whatever. And you can see now why when my kids had arrived into my life that I was coming out at the end of that and this was arriving. And so I was still all over the place trying to write things up. So my relationship with my mother was quite fractured at that stage. So fast forward on to, it's approximately 8 years ago now. My mother was falling and we knew there was a problem with her and she'd been in the hospital for the third time. So we had discovered anyway through diagnosis that she had vascular dementia. So as a family, and we all kind of near thereabouts, we took a night each for my mother to care for her. We carers in during the day. So we do the night work and the weekend work, but we'd have some, so we could live and we could have our own lives and maybe our own family and sacrifice time to be with her and do our best and work from there. But I remember sitting with her for the first couple of Thursday nights, and at this stage I had been through psychotherapy, I'd been through NLP, I had all that work done myself, and I'd learned it as well, and then I'd fallen across the principles, and I remember sitting across from her, and I was looking at her one evening, and there she was, all wrapped up as slow as a bug in front of the fire, and her lovely little grey wool boots and her. And I went, oh my God, this woman has got clay feet. Don't ask me how insights can make sense. And I began to realize my mother's humanity. Not just as my mother, but as a woman. Doing her best. Like I say to both my kids, if this is another part of that lesson, if I'm doing my best, so is everybody else. It's not just about me. Everybody's doing the same they can with what they got or what they understand that they have. So I began to see my mother's life. I started to talk to my sisters about it, and I just started to inquire into her life and the different events and the landmarks in her life and whatever. And I imagine two of the hardest events in her life were, and I saw it playing out afterwards. I understood afterwards how it played out because I saw it when happened when my father died as well. That I'm the second William in my family. I'm William Gerard. My brother was William Anthony, and my sister was Mairead. And they were number 2 and number 4, and they both died from cystic fibrosis. And it was in a time in Ireland where there was no mass for children, there was none for young babies like that. There was none of that. So my father had to bring home, on 2 different occasions, a deceased child in a white coffin on his lap with the undertaker and basically bury that child with no ceremony, nothing. Just, I don't know if you can hear my daughter singing in the background going up the stairs, but and they were profound. They had a profound effect on my mother because here's a woman who had with a very deep Catholic faith, and every time so by the time my sister Jordan came on, then Thomas, and then me, my mother was at full tilt. She was literally the only thing. Like I said, we got therapy. They got hard work. That was their therapy. They worked their way through it. And I saw it after my father died. In fairness, they were having a great retirement. They were going on holidays. They were enjoying themselves. My mother was doing things she hadn't done, I'd say, since she was in her 20s. They were traveling to Rome and they were on holiday. Sorry about that. I didn't realize. I
think we lost you just for a second. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize that. But and then he died suddenly. And my mother threw herself back into work. Just literally threw herself back into work. So when I was starting to see through this, I began to see my mother's coping strategy with her pain was to literally work her way through it. And that started to make a lot of sense to me then. So I began to realize that it wasn't about me. It was about my mother trying to cope, right? And so that led to me starting to see my mother as a woman with her own wants, needs, desires, thoughts, actions, behaviors. And when I look back as a child and I realized, well, wait a second, I was a wayward 5-year-old, 6-year-old boy. I mean, I'm trying to just take off. You know, she'd get up in the morning, like, and I'd be at 6 o'clock and I'd be going up the door with my bicycle and she wouldn't have known where I was gone to. And one woman, her daughter has passed away many years ago. Her daughter lost still inclined to mind, said to me one day, she said, yeah, Mrs. Roach, she said, you know what, the backyards of Abbeyfield raised jubilee men. Because I could be found anywhere inside anybody's backyard. I was just that kind of kid, right? So obviously my mother was worried about me at the time and trying to keep me safe and keeping me at home required some more stringent parenting. And then I began to realize that that was actually what my mother was doing. She was so fucking terrified that something might happen to me that I don't think she could have coped if something had happened to me. It would have broken her. So in a misguided sense, Matthew, she was protecting me. But it was never from any ill intent or lack of love. She just didn't know what else to do. And she was terrified in case something like that would happen. Nobody understood it clearly, because I could see how I could do that myself as a parent. So how hard is it to lose 2 children? But to almost lose the third one would be just, it's devastating for one. I can't imagine but what would it be like for 3? It would just, I don't know. So I began to see all of that. And then I started to really fall in love with my mother, to see what she had struggled to put herself through and all the different things. So by the time my mother passed, we were complete in our love. And it was amazing, to be truthfully honest. As I was growing up, I often thought, I'm going to be relieved when this woman is going to be dead and gone out of my life. It's just going to be a relief. The long, large, looming figure and shadow of my mother will be gone from my life, When my mother passed, I was actually relieved in the sense her suffering was over. That was it, because it was nothing to do with love. All right? We were so completely in love at that stage and free with each other. And this all fast forwards to last week, what you're talking about. And my sisters were going through her old stuff, going through boxes of stuff they hadn't gone through. It was her 4th anniversary on February 8th. And my sisters were wading through it, and what fell out of my mother's old papers except a letter written to me. Now, she had to write that letter at least 4 to 5 years before she passed, because her writing was gone as well. She couldn't write. And so it was still in my mother's style, but wasn't quite as strong. But I knew it. So that means that before even I sat down to care for her, she already was in that frame of mind. And it leads me to this, which is really important, and I want guys to hear this particular story. My mother worked 18 hours a day, almost 7 days a week. Okay. And that was my big problem with my mother. But my mother was so frantic that she didn't want us to experience other stuff that happened with her when she was younger, even though she grew up in a wealthy family. Her father was a big farmer and stuff, because she married a man who wasn't a farmer. She got no dowry or anything like that. So it was, and so she was hard times for her and my dad when they started out, that type of stuff, which was important culturally at that time. And so she always felt behind the curve and maybe not good enough, and she didn't want that to happen to us. And so she was always trying to prove to herself that she was worthy and capable, and by the standards of hard work. All this kind of jumbled up misunderstanding. But when she wrote me that letter, Matthew, and I'm sorry, I don't have it with me here. My wallet is outside. It's on if anybody wants to read it, it's on my Facebook page, Billy Mann. It's open to the public. You're more than welcome to visit it. And essentially what she says to me is that in that letter, she realizes now that she should have spent more time with me. Please forgive me. So what it struck me was that she was telling me 4 years after her passing that she'd heard me.
Mm.
And that she knew, and before she evolved into the dementia, this was part of her clear thinking, that she had worked too hard, she had missed so much, and she was asking for my forgiveness. She never needed my forgiveness anyway. You know, it was forgiving herself, perhaps would have been it, but it was deeply touching. It was deeply touching, and it deeply reminded me of the fact that, and I started that post with like nobody, I wish I had worked more hours, said nobody ever when they were dying. Because it's true.
Yes.
And it's the living proof from a workaholic, a woman who worked all those hours, almost 7 days a week, to realize at the end of her life that she did work too hard, that she missed so much. And she realized it. And she was asking my forgiveness. And she never gave me the letter. I think maybe perhaps she felt, embarrassed by it, or hurt, or humiliated, or how I take it. And she was probably right. Her instinct, I might have sneered at it. I don't know. Like, I can't say. But when I got the letter this time, I knew exactly what she was saying to me.
Mm.
That she was at peace. Because I was completely at peace at that when she left. I always refer to it as the silent conversations. We never had these conversations. But as I began to understand and deepen my knowledge and my awareness for myself, I saw it in her too. Because what we see in ourselves, we see in others.
Yeah. All boats rise with the tide as well.
All boats rise with the tide.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful.
Mm.
It really, really was beautiful. And it informs me, when you have somebody who is that impactful in your life as a parent, that, my gut instinct was always right. She was working too hard.
Mm.
But now I realize that, we all make the same mistake of judging somebody by their behavior. The behavior is only always ever downstream. The behavior is only ever going to inform you of the errant thinking that's going on in somebody and what they're doing and what beliefs they have about trying to cope or trying to deal with things and right or go wrong. And they're doing their best to dissipate. We all are dissipate feelings that we don't want to have.
Yeah. Yeah. Billy, this has been an amazing conversation. And I'm so glad you shared those two stories at the end about your dad and your mum. I mean, they're so moving in themselves, but also I think they'll be incredibly enlightening for anybody listening, men and women, about relationships, with parents, with their children, with anybody in life, because really what you're talking about is the essence of life, isn't it? Which is love.
Yeah. If you ain't got, we are that, and we're of that.
Mm. Yeah.
We're not looking for love. That's the mistake. We are that love.
We are love. What a perfect way to end. If people want to find out more about you, you've mentioned your Facebook page. Where else can they find out about you?
Billy, it's very simple. I just use Facebook and Billy Mann Coaching if they want to email me at gmail.com. It's as simple as that. They can PM me. My Facebook page is open. It's public, so people find me usually through that conduit. Or the email me at billymanncoaching@gmail.com. It's as simple as that, Matthew.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Billy.
My pleasure. I'm really honored to have the opportunity to tell that story.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
it's been wonderful. Thank you.